The ambiance was one of solemn desperation on the bridge of the Ark. Alarms blared an incessant symphony of dying systems. Captain Kaller stared grimly at the main display, his four eyes tracing the fading energy readings with growing despair. The ancient hyperdrive had finally sputtered its last, stranding them in a desolate star system far beyond any charted territories. This wasn't a mere voyage gone wrong, this was the precipice of extinction. For centuries, the Ark had served as a sanctuary to the Solter, a once grand star-faring race. A cosmic calamity had destroyed their home world, reducing a vibrant civilization to a ship-bound remnant. Painstakingly, the survivors had preserved their history, science, and culture, but the ship itself was succumbing to the harshness of space. Multiple species acclaimed engineers among them had tried to stem the decay, yet all deemed it a losing battle. The Solter were nomads without a future. Captain Kira, their chief engineer, said quietly, breaking Kaller's bleak reverie. She was young, her scales yet to achieve the deep hues that signified advanced age, yet her eyes held the weary resolve of someone who had witnessed too many sunsets with the certainty of no dawn. Systems are down to 15%. Non-essentials are shut off. Life support will hold for 3 cycles at best. Kaller nodded, a guttural rumble echoing in his throat. 3 cycles, perhaps enough time to transmit a final message across the vast gulf of space, a futile whisper into the void marking the end of their noble lineage, and then the silence of eternity. A new signal blinked on the ancient navigation console, a proximity alert. At first he dismissed it as an uncharted asteroid cluster, yet as the readings became clearer, incredulity bloomed in his heart. Captain Kira's tone carried a note of baffled confusion. It's a structure, artificial, human design. Humans, Kaller knew of them, young, boisterous, and notoriously persistent. They had only recently broken free of their home system, yet their presence had echoed throughout known space. Their engineers were infamous for an almost reckless disregard for technical protocol, yet it was audacity, so the stories went, that allowed them to salvage and jury-rig ships others would have long abandoned as scrap. A strange sensation stirred within him, a flicker of something the Solter had almost forgotten: hope. Alter course. Bring us within range. It felt reckless, unwise, and utterly against everything the Solter preached, yet reckless action now had become preferable to the slow, agonizing march towards extinction. The structure grew on their view screen, a utilitarian contraption. All exposed beams and blinking lights with none of the elegant lines found in Solter design. It bore numerous scars of repair, mismatched plating, makeshift solar arrays, and what looked like cables snaking externally like exposed arteries on a skeletal frame. This was no grand interstellar station but an outpost, an audacious claim of human presence on the fringes of charted space. As the Ark drew near, a message crackled over the comms. Unidentified vessel, state your purpose and registry. The voice was garbled with a rough edge that carried none of the smooth formality typical of established races, yet an undercurrent of curiosity tinged the query. This is Kaller, captain of the Ark of the Solter. His voice caught in his throat, a confession they had kept hidden for centuries, a desperate plea disguised as an introduction. Our systems are failing. We request immediate assistance. A pause stretched through the comm channel, punctuated by the distant hum of the Ark's dying heart. Then the human voice returned, a shade of surprise now lacing the rough tone. Holy scrap. The Ark, as in the Ark. Buddy, you're about 1,000 light years off course. Hold tight. We're sending out the welcome crew. The crew, that word, so innocuous, sparked a jolt of resentment in Kira. Were they to be met not with engineers, with experts, but mere technicians? Captain, she voiced her protest. We must inform them of the seriousness of the situation. They can't possibly. What, Lieutenant? A new voice cut through the comms, this one tinged with a hint of amusement, of challenge. Fix your fancy death trap. Now, come on, don't interrupt. Name's Rex, by the way, head engineer and resident miracle worker around these parts. Kaller exchanged a troubled glance with Kira. This went against every protocol, yet as his eyes flicked to the faltering energy readings, he knew protocol was on the verge of becoming irrelevant. Rex strode onto the Ark's bridge, accompanied by a motley crew of humans. Their coveralls were stained with grease, and tools dangled unceremoniously from their belts. Rex himself, a grizzled man with a shock of gray hair and a grin that spoke volumes of mischief, looked like he'd been dragged out of an engine room rather than prepped for a diplomatic encounter. His eyes, however, held a sharp gleam of intelligence and a quiet self-assurance that disarmed the Solter's instinctive distrust. So this is the Ark, Rex drawled, surveying the dimly lit bridge. He whistled appreciatively at the intricate, albeit decaying, control panels. A bit fancier than the rust buckets we usually deal with. I'll give you that the Solter bristled at the casual dismissal of their cradle of civilization. Kira stepped forward, her scales bristling slightly. Mr. Rex, while we appreciate your enthusiasm, you must understand the gravity of our situation. Countless engineers far more experienced than your crew, she struggled to find the right word, have failed to stem the decay. Rex held up a hand, humor giving way to a no-nonsense glint in his eyes. Look, lady, I admire all the formality, but maybe we should ditch the titles. Names and problems, that's how we roll on the frontier. I reckon your ship's in trouble, and I'm here to fix it. So what's the main issue? Kaller moved forward, his presence imposing despite the grim circumstances. He explained the critical power loss, highlighting the ancient design and complex Solter power conduits that had bewildered previous crews. Rex's crew fanned out, their eyes darting over the consoles, a constant stream of technical jargon filling the air. They frowned, scratched their heads, and shot Rex questioning looks. He, however, seemed unperturbed, wandering the bridge with a thoughtful expression. So here's what I'm saying, Rex finally declared. You folks got a system designed for precision, for everything running just so. Problem is, just so went out the window about a century ago. You're fighting entropy with a butter knife. No wonder it ain't working. He paused, as if waiting for the offense in his words to sink in. Kira bristled. The Ark has sustained our people for generations. No one's saying it's a bad design, Rex countered, or what it was meant to be. Now it's a cobbled-together mess of failing parts and fancy tech that's about as useful as a chocolate teapot. Your people ain't dumb, I'll give you that, but you gotta start thinking outside the box if you want this old girl to fly again. Rex's words felt like a blow to the Solter's pride. They were an ancient race, meticulous in their craft, keepers of secrets passed down through countless generations. To have their technology reduced to a mere cobbled-together mess by a backwater human engineer felt like an insult. And yet Kira held her sharp retort. There was an undeniable logic to his words. For decades, every attempted repair had followed the same path: analyze a failing system, seek precise replacements, or delicately adapt existing ones to restore original function. It was a battle against time and relentless deterioration. And what Kaller rumbled, his voice thick with a mix of resignation and intrigue. Would you propose outside the box thinking? Rex grinned, seemingly pleased with the captain's shift in tone. First off, he declared, we ditch the notion of fixing things back to perfect. Ain't gonna happen. We're going to rig, patch, and improvise until we get something that works, even if it ain't pretty. He gestured towards a section of flickering consoles. Those panels, for instance. Instead of tracking down why those circuits are fried, we bypass them, route power through the maintenance conduits. Sure, it's like using your veins as electrical wires, but it'll buy you time. Kira recoiled. Maintenance conduits are not designed for sustained load. You risk cascading overload. Of course I do, Rex shot back, but you're also minutes away from your ship becoming a fancy tombstone. Calculated risks. That's what's kept humanity alive out here on the edge. Now his eyes swept over the bridge. Where's your toolbox? A ripple of disbelief coursed through the Solter. Toolbox, Kira echoed. Surely you don't intend to? Rex's grin widened. Oh, I intend. Best part is, your fancy tech's gonna be cannibalizing a lot of it. See, to really fix things, sometimes you gotta rip them apart first. With that declaration, it was as if a dam had broken. Rex's crew, until now hesitant observers, moved with swift certainty. Tools appeared from seemingly nowhere: heavy-duty cutters, plasma torches, rolls of improbably thick wire. Rex himself knelt by a console, his hands a blur as he started ripping out delicate, glowing components. It was less a repair attempt and more an act of creative destruction. And the worst part? A sliver of desperate hope ignited within Kira as she watched. Chaos reigned on the bridge of the Ark. The Solter watched in horrified fascination as their ship, their sanctuary, was seemingly torn apart by the humans. Rex and his crew operated with an unsettling intensity, less engineers and more like scavengers reclaiming wreckage. Panels were ripped open, wires spliced with a disregard that bordered on recklessness, and systems Kira thought vital were unceremoniously bypassed with jury-rigged contraptions. The process was loud, jarring. The hiss of plasma torches, the clang of tools, and the crackling of stressed circuitry assaulted the Solter's refined senses. Yet through the discord, Kira began to see a strange method. To her shock, power readings began to flicker back to life. Systems long thought dormant hummed with renewed energy. The humans weren't just fixing, they were rewiring the Ark itself. See, this is where you folks got it wrong, Rex explained over the din, his voice booming with enthusiasm. As he routed a bundle of cables through a panel Kira had assumed to be purely decorative. You treat a ship like some sacred artifact, scared to change a single wire. Thing is, she ain't a museum piece no more. She's a survivor, and survivors gotta adapt. The Solter's instinct screamed in protest, yet the undeniable results on the display panel silenced them. Power conduits that had been fading into darkness now glowed, erratically yet with the unmistakable signs of life. As the hours slipped by, a begrudging respect began to form within Kira. The humans lacked the meticulous finesse her own training demanded, yet they displayed a raw understanding of the flow of energy, an intuitive connection to the ship's failing soul that bordered on uncanny. Rex, in particular, was a force of nature. He moved with the ship's sway like he'd been born in zero gravity, his eyes constantly scanning for the next weakness, the next point where his unorthodox solutions could be forced into play. It was as if he saw not the ship's original design, but the potential that lay hidden beneath decades of decay. Word of the humans' unconventional work spread through the Ark. Initially there was fear, anger even at the desecration of their last bastion of hope. But as the lights flickered brighter, as offline systems groaned back to life, even the most traditional of the Solter began to question their long-held beliefs. Rumors circulated, wild stories of jury-rigged hyperdrive boosters cobbled together using kitchen appliances, of life support systems powered through what suspiciously sounded like entertainment console wiring. Each tale, however exaggerated, carried a kernel of truth: the humans were achieving what others could not. Kira, initially the most vocal critic, found herself caught in a strange limbo. Her every engineering instinct protested the humans' methods, yet she couldn't deny the results. Drawn by a mix of curiosity and trepidation, she began to shadow Rex, questioning his every outlandish modification. To her surprise, beneath the gruff jokes and haphazard approach, Rex possessed a deep understanding of fundamental principles. He explained concepts of resilience and redundancy, of sacrificing elegance for functionality. He spoke of how human ships, often cobbled together from salvage tech of various origins, demanded a kind of adaptability that formal training rarely accounted for. "You think linearly," Rex told her as they patched a failing coolant system with what Kira could only identify as thermal shielding. Start to finish, perfect flow. The universe don't work that way, especially not out here. It's messy, unpredictable. Sometimes the best solution is the one that works, even if it isn't the prettiest way to get there. A strange shift began to happen within Kira. Alongside her frustration, a spark of inspiration ignited. Could her people, for so long focused on preservation, have lost the ability to truly adapt in the face of overwhelming adversity? And as Rex and his crew continued to work miracles with duct tape and stubborn will, Kira found herself not just questioning Solter methods, but also the very purpose they had clung to for so long. If survival meant sacrifice, meant letting go of a past that could not be restored, then what was the true spirit worth preserving? Days blurred into a whirlwind of activity on the Ark. The bridge remained a testament to controlled chaos. Consoles flickered with mismatched indicators, exposed wires snaked across pristine panels, and the constant hum of power tools provided a strange background score. Amid this, the Solter and humans slowly forged a bond, born of desperation and begrudging admiration. Rex's crew, initially treated with disdain, proved their worth time and time again. There was Jo, a slight woman with deceptively delicate hands who could coax failing systems back to life with a few deftly placed wires and what seemed like sheer force of will. And then there was Big Ben, a towering man with a booming laugh who treated ancient and fragile Solter machinery with the surprising gentleness of a giant. As trust tentatively grew, Kira found herself sharing the Solter knowledge. She scrolled through ancient schematics, explaining original design principles meant for a time of abundance and perfection that now felt like a distant, unattainable dream. At first, the humans seemed bewildered by the sheer complexity, but their outsider perspective proved unexpectedly valuable. "It's like you built a palace over a sinkhole," Rex remarked after a particularly dense tech briefing. "It's impressive on top, but the foundations are crumbling. Now, instead of rebuilding the palace, what if we just focused on stopping your ship from falling apart completely?" His words, though lacking in tact, held a fundamental truth. Solter designs, though elegant and ingenious, had been created for stability, not adaptability. Over the centuries, they had become obsessed with maintaining an ideal that was no longer feasible. Perhaps it was time to embrace a new approach, one focused on functionality over pristine beauty. Kira hesitantly began offering suggestions, pointing out where the systems could be simplified, redundancies created, and power flows rerouted. The humans listened, their faces scrunched in concentration, a strange mix of respect and amusement in their eyes as they grappled with knowledge far more advanced than their own. Yet the collaboration was not without friction. Arguments erupted over the best course of action, Rex's gut instinct fixes sometimes clashing with Kira's meticulous calculations. But even in those heated exchanges there was a shift. They challenged each other with an honesty born out of shared purpose. The boundaries between Solter and human blurred in the face of their common goal. News of the progress within the Ark spread throughout the ship. Solter, initially hesitant, began to flock to the areas where the humans worked, their curiosity overpowering their long-held aversion to the unorthodox. Hope, so long extinguished, began to flicker back to life. But hope, the Solter had learned, was a fragile and often deceptive thing. It was during the 13th cycle, with the ship showing the first genuine signs of stabilization, that disaster struck. A cascading surge overloaded a patch within the secondary power nexus. The lights dimmed, systems shuddered, and the grim specter of imminent failure loomed once again. The air crackled with tension. Kira felt despair coil within her. All that work, all those sacrifices to their old ways, seemed for naught. Rex, however, remained surprisingly calm. "All right," folks, he barked, his voice cutting through the rising panic. "We got ourselves a setback. Not the end of the world." Kira, he turned towards her, his eyes holding a steadiness that calmed her own racing heart. "Get me the original schematics for this section. Joe, Ben, start prepping for a full bypass." The humans moved with renewed urgency, while Kira, her hands shaking slightly, accessed the ancient archives. She traced the intricate power flow to the nexus as it should have been, a testament to a perfection that now seemed agonizingly out of reach. Here she passed the diagrams to Rex, her voice betraying her desperation. "There's no redundancy built in. This section is a critical single point of failure." Rex scanned the schematics, his brow furrowing, a silence stretching between them that felt longer than the slow demise of their ship. Finally, he looked up, and a flicker of his old mischievous grin returned. "You know," he said with a wink that defied the circumstances, "that just gave me a crazy idea." He huddled with Joe and Ben, their voices a low, urgent buzz. Kira watched, her apprehension battling a strange surge of trust. When the trio finally turned back, there was a steely determination in their eyes. "All right, here's the plan," Rex declared, "and it's going to get a whole lot weirder before it gets better." The Solter gathered around the secondary power nexus, their hearts pounding with a mix of anticipation and dread. The flickering light painted their faces with an ethereal glow, highlighting the weary lines and the desperate hope in their eyes. It was the culmination of all their efforts, the moment when their fate would be decided. Rex and his team moved with a sense of purpose. Following his instructions, they began stripping the room of non-essential equipment, terminals, consoles, even decorative panels that had been part of the ship for millennia. Kira watched with a lump in her throat. This was an even greater act of desecration than before, yet if it was what was needed to save her people, she couldn't find the will to protest. When the room was bare, Rex unveiled the heart of his plan, a bulky, archaic human generator, a portable brute meant for remote mining colonies. Its dull, industrial design was an affront to the Solter sensibilities, yet in the dim light of their dying ship, it held an undeniable promise of raw power. "We're going to graft this baby right onto your fancy nexus," Rex explained, a manic glint in his eyes. "Use its output to jumpstart the whole system. Problem is, your delicate wiring ain't going to handle the surge, so we're building a whole new circuit." He gestured towards the pile of stripped components. Consoles, paneling, even the decorative casings now lay in a meticulously organized row. Ben and Joe began feeding thick wires through them, creating a makeshift conduit network that sprawled across the floor like exposed veins. "Each piece acts like a resistor," Rex clarified, sensing the Solter's bewildered stares. "Spread the surge. Give your original wiring a fighting chance." It was madness. Elegant Solter technology reduced to crude conductors, and in their desperation, there was a strange beauty to it. This was a testament to adaptability, to the raw will to survive, echoing the very spirit of Rex and his human crew. The connections were made. The generator roared to life, and with a final resolute nod, Rex triggered the surge. Power arced through the makeshift circuit in a blinding flash. Ancient panels sparked, overloading systems gave a dying shriek, and then silence. Seconds stretched into an eternity. Then, one by one, lights flickered on, displays hummed, and the heart of the Ark began to beat anew. A ripple of stunned disbelief washed over the Solter, followed by an eruption of joyous shouts and cries of relief. They had cheated death, pulled back from the brink, not by grace or meticulous planning, but by an unyielding determination and a willingness to sacrifice the very essence of their past to secure their future. Kira felt tears welling in her eyes. Tears of relief, yes, but also something more, a profound sense of shift. Her people, for so long clinging to the ideal of perfection, had been forced to confront its ultimate futility in the face of overwhelming odds. This victory, this rebirth of their ship, was built not on pristine elegance, but on patchwork solutions and salvage components. Rex, amidst the celebration, quietly observed the Sultan. His usual bravado was tempered with a hint of understanding. He approached Kalar, the Sultan captain, and extended a calloused hand. "Well, Captain," he said, his voice rough but genuine, "looks like this old rust bucket's gonna fly a while longer. Just remember, she ain't the museum piece she used to be. She's a fighter now, just like your people." Kalar took the human's hand, his grip surprisingly firm. "Indeed, Rex, we owe you everything. Yet I also sense that we have gained far more than mere survival." His gaze swept the scarred yet revitalized bridge of the Ark. "My people have clung to the past for too long. You and your unusual brand of engineering," he let out a dry chuckle, "have shown us a different path." Rex grinned. "Well, just don't get used to it. A little chaos is good for the soul, keeps things interesting." Then, turning to his crew, he raised his voice. "All right, team, break's over. Let's see how much further we can push this old girl. Still wouldn't mind getting that hyperdrive working." The next few cycles were a blur of relentless activity. Guided by the vast Sultan knowledge, Rex's crew achieved feats that would be whispered about in human outposts for years to come. They stabilized the failing hyperdrive, not by restoring it, but by overclocking a network of auxiliary engines to act as a temporary workaround. Navigation systems, long corrupted, were revitalized using an unlikely mix of entertainment system circuits and scavenged sensor arrays. Through it all, the Sultan watched, learned, and began to adapt. Young engineers, inspired by Kira's willingness to embrace the unorthodox, shadowed the humans, eager to adopt this new philosophy built on resilience. Finally, the day arrived when the Ark, scarred but undeniably alive, was ready to resume its journey. Yet it was a journey forever transformed, both in destination and in spirit. When Rex bid farewell to Kalar and the newly energized bridge, there was a solemn respect between them that went beyond the camaraderie of those who have faced disaster together. So Rex scratched his stubbled chin. "Where to now, Captain? Back to find your lost homeworld or forge a new path?" Kalar's gaze was fixed on the distant stars, his eyes reflecting a multitude of lights, a testament to the patchwork brilliance now coursing within the ship. "Neither, Rex. I have come to realize there's no going back to a past that no longer exists, and blindly searching for a future shrouded in myth holds little wisdom. My people, we need a new purpose." Rex nodded in understanding. He had seen that same shift on the frontier among human colonies scattered amongst the unforgiving cosmos. Survival demanded more than nostalgia or blind ambition. "I hear there are systems on the edge of charted space," Kalar continued, "where outposts struggle, young races take their first steps out of their worlds. Perhaps the Sultan have a role to play there. We possess knowledge, yes, but it is knowledge made stagnant by our own rigid pride. It is time for us to share, to guide, and perhaps in doing so, also learn to become something new." A smile flickered on Rex's face. "Well, Captain, if you're ever looking for an escort or need a particularly stubborn engine fixed, you know where to find us." He extended his hand, and this time Kalar took it with the warmth of a genuine equal. As the humans made their way back to their unglamorous maintenance depot, Rex couldn't help but feel a deep sense of satisfaction. Sure, they had saved a ship, but that was their job, after all. But it was the ripple effect, the unforeseen consequences that ignited a quiet pride within him. "You see," he told his crew, a thoughtful tone lacing his usual bluster, "sometimes the best way to fix things ain't just about putting them back the way they were. Sometimes it's showing folks a whole new way, a better way, even if they need a bit of a shove to get there." And as their small ship faded into the vastness, leaving the Ark on its newly charted course, Rex knew they had left a mark on the universe far greater than any patch job or jury-rigged hyperdrive system. They had gifted the Sultan a legacy, not of past glories, but of enduring hope and the courage to embrace change. That, in its own way, was the most human thing of all. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. For every comment that says we will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.